Hello, and welcome to today's session on Accounting and Professional Services 101. Today we will be going over a brief introduction, an overview of professional services, who are the Big Four, focus on advisory and the services that advisory professionals provide, what you can expect as an intern or a new hire, and how you can get involved in professional services. My name is Sharon Dalshad, and I am a consultant in the pharmaceutical and life sciences compliance space.
And hi everyone, I'm Greg Battaglia, and I'm a consultant in the media and entertainment advisory space. So let's spend a minute talking about what are professional services. Professional services, or advisory services, are large global organizations that provide a multitude of business capabilities. We solve business challenges or assist companies to improve their products and service offerings, or provide access to intellectual capital that they may not have in-house. So what does this mean? This means that professional services firms are very similar to consulting firms with a few key differences. Professional services firms do more than just consulting. Professional services focus on audit, tax, and advisory work, along with a multitude of other areas. And what does this allow? This allows us to build relationships with clients. Perhaps a tax client, someone that we've been doing international tax work for the past 5 years, may have a new business challenge with a company they're trying to acquire in a different area. And along with this acquisition comes the need to improve the process and look at the organizational structure of that company. And so the tax folks within a professional services firm may reach out to the advisory folks and request assistance on a project in doing a organizational and process improvement. And so you'll see this relationship between the different pillars or areas that the professional services firms work within. However, there is a heavy focus today on speaking about advisory services, which you can liken in many ways to consulting.
So traditionally, the Big Four firms listed here were accounting firms focusing on tax and audit. However, all four of the firms listed here now also include advisory divisions that focus on additional advisory consulting services, such as the ones that Greg and I will discuss today. The typical structure at each of these firms starts from the top with partners and principals, as well as directors, who are focused on the sales aspects of the companies and are mostly responsible for the relationships. Under them are the senior managers, who also lead sales efforts and oversee the projects from a high level. The managers will focus more on the day-to-day management, while the senior consultants do more of the day-to-day work, and the consultants, analysts, associates, or staff level are more of the entry-level positions responsible for the tasks listed here, including analysis and research, documentation, and project management for the day-to-day activities. When you start with a professional services firm, you'll come in as, most likely, I should say, not always, as a consultant, analyst, associate, or staff level, so that junior level. And we actually have people coming in at those levels that have even completed some graduate work. Depending on your experience and the acceleration of your own personal growth, you can expect to be in that role for 2 to 4 years, followed by the other progressions as you see listed in this chart.
So there are many services that the Big Four firms provide. You may have traditionally heard of audit or accounting services, tax, forensics, and the like, but what we'd like to focus on today is what's called advisory services. Advisory services you could liken in many ways to consulting, in that we are helping companies to make improvements, to become more efficient, or to basically become better at whatever it is that they do. Some examples that are listed here around mergers and acquisitions, thinking through how we can help companies to determine pricing and the process for working out transactions. We have various other areas such as process improvement, thinking through what companies do today and how they could do it more efficiently, more effectively, or at a lower cost. You'll see other areas such as operations, capital projects, etc. I'll just use my personal example of working as a media and entertainment consultant, really working in the front office with media companies thinking through business challenges. One example would be how I'm working for a major broadcaster that is thinking about how they improve and change the way they do digital distribution. So there's content that they had traditionally put on television that they'd now like to put on Hulu and on YouTube and in many various ways. Just like a film goes from a movie studio and a movie theater then ultimately to DVD, there's now the same kind of process happening in the television world. And they'd like help in thinking through how to do that and how to make the most money in that process. So this is just one example, of course, in my industry area, but this is the kind of work that advisory individuals can work on.
Similar to Greg, I also work in more of an advisory role. I did previously work in the forensics and fraud investigation area in a similar role. My space is more focused on pharmaceutical companies and how they follow laws and regulations, focusing on the processes they need to implement in order to successfully follow those laws and regulations.
So as you start to think about professional services as a potential career path, you'd often ask questions about what it is like to live the life of a traveling consultant. And this slide is just intended to give you some view of what it means day to day and week to week working in this type of role. So as you can expect, as you compare an industry job versus a professional services or consulting role, you're going to be not working the standard 9 to 5. I like to think of this in a spectrum. I like to think that the industry jobs may have the 9 to 5 role. On the left-hand side, on the far right-hand side, you have investment banking jobs that have you working many long hours, of course with good compensation, but somewhere in the in-between there is the consulting experience. And I'd say that traditionally I get to work somewhere between 8 and 8:30 every day, and I probably leave between 7 and 7:30 every day. Now there's certainly some times that this extra project work may be happening. We may be closing on an engagement, working to finish a key deliverable, and the time may go above that. In other examples, such as today where we're creating this film, my team was able to have a summer Friday and leave a bit early and really enjoy the nice weather that's outside. So part of being being in consulting or being in professional services is the ability to have flexibility and being able and willing to respond to clients' needs as they dynamically change through the year. On the slide you'll see here most of the work depicted during the week, which I think is very fair. Checking email through the weekend, just keeping a pulse on what might be changing and happening at your clients kind of at all times is really important. That doesn't mean that you don't get your own time to enjoy life. It just means that being connected with your team and being connected with your clients is an important part of the experience. And I must say, while it does list weekend work, I could probably count the number of times I've worked on the weekend on 2 hands or so. Really try and limit that time, and while the week gets a little busy every now and again, the weekends tend to be my time. I don't know, Sharon, if you've had a similar experience in working in your consulting experiences.
No, Greg, I mostly agree with you, and I think what a lot of the accounting firms as well as the other consulting firms really focus on is that flexibility. So I actually just switched firms, and one of the things that they promote, like they were promoting at onboarding, was the fact that, like, if you have a doctor's appointment on a Tuesday, that's fine, go to your doctor's appointment. But the point is that you're doing your work and you're getting your work done. You're there for your team and for your clients. So it's just that understanding that we're all human, and the understanding that we have respect for both our team and our clients. So here are some tips for success. Don't sweat the technical stuff. I definitely agree with that. I think one of the reasons I personally got into consulting was because it's not about having the technical skills quite yet, it's about learning them. This is something that I learned from day one. You're going to be hired for your personality. You're going to be hired because you're hardworking. It's not about your technical skills. You will learn that, especially if you're coming in as a staff or junior analyst. Definitely ask questions and be proactive, seeking opportunities. Again, it's very relationship based. People need to know you. You will need to get to know people. They'll want to learn about you. And one of the things that I always teach people that are stepping into more of a management role um, or if they're just reporting into a manager, is that you'll set those expectations and explain what the expectations are as a manager, but then as a below person reporting into a manager, ask those questions so that you can meet the expectations met of you. Building a network and developing a personal brand, again, very important. Everything is relationship based. You want people to know you, know what you're good at, what you're interested in. And finally, learn how to say no. It's not about saying yes to everybody. It's about doing well. Greg, do you have anything to add?
I just think that the benefit of coming into a professional services firm is that you have the ability to gain some breadth before you gain depth. And what I mean by that is, while you hear the stories of Sharon and I talking about our particular industries and the particular focuses that we have, when you join a professional services firm, you have a lot of bandwidth to explore and experience different types of work. There are frequently folks who join in rotational programs, folks who join one practice and then transfer into another, and really have the experience to try out a bunch of different industries, to try out a bunch of different positions. And I think it's really important to be open and willing to explore and to really identify your sweet spot within the professional services environment. The other thing is, once you are within a firm, as Sharon mentioned, networking and personal relationships is really key. And the reason why that is because you're ultimately working towards becoming a partner, potentially, or becoming a senior executive, both of which, even a senior executive in an industry job, both of which are very relationship focused and sales focused. And the experiences that you have as a young person are building the technical depth so that ultimately you're able to sell the work. And I think that's a lot of what has motivated me to stay with the firm as long as I have. So let's talk about how you can get into professional services. How do you make that first step? Since this is the Professional Services 101 video, I want to let you know that the Big Four and all of the professional services firms really look for a broad range of backgrounds. There are certainly certain degrees, such as finance and IT, that are sought by the firms. However, there are people that range from art history to engineering majors, as it mentions here on this slide. So there's nothing that would preclude you from being able to join and start in the professional services environment, but there certainly are some degrees which are more highly sought after than others. What is important, and Sharon mentioned it in the past slide, is the ability to really put your head down, to be committed to learning, and to have an open mind about what you might be focused on, what industries you'd be working on, and what you're doing day to day. And when they say the airport test, the third bullet, they're talking about if you are with somebody who you would want to spend an hour or two in the airport with, in a personal level, these are the kinds of people that you want to have on your team. So think of the times that you're interviewing not only as a time to demonstrate your technical expertise, but also to recognize that in the professional services or in the consulting world, you're going to be spending a lot of time with your teammates, and you're going to be in a lot of different client-serving and non-client serving scenarios. And so what they're looking for is, could they really spend that hour sitting next to you? Could you launch the conversation? Could you carry on talking with somebody who you don't know and really make them feel comfortable? That's really more important as you're starting out than it is having a breadth or depth of a particular piece of experience. The structure for actually interviewing and getting involved in a professional services firm is common. There are many behavioral interviews followed by technical interviews and case studies that are looked at by the different firms. Of course, each firm is going to attack these in a different order, different levels of rigor, but you should be prepared to answer questions about times that you have performed certain activities, led a team, solved difficult challenges, and this is about having a free-flowing conversation and being able to really explain your strengths and benefits as you go through the interview process. As we think about how folks join and get involved with the professional services firms, many folks get involved through an internship program. Internships are generally offered to juniors who are becoming seniors in their undergraduate degrees or to master's degree pursuing students. And there are many firms that have very high percentages for offering full-time positions to their interns. And it's a great way to get your first foot in the door and to really prove in a real working environment that you have what it takes to be an employee at a professional services firm. Generally, professional services firms would ask that you apply for an internship during the winter time frame from December through March. Each firm, of course, has different deadlines. However, it's important to get an early start, and it's also important to think about making the relationship early on. A lot of the professional services firms are looking to network with sophomores and in some cases even freshmen, and to keep in touch as you go through your college career, so that by the time you get ready for an internship, you're not just a new resume that's sitting in the pile, but you're really a name and a face and a relationship with the company. And finally, folks that are pursuing a master's in accounting, we just wanted to note, may have a different set of processes for applying. There are, of course, people who are applying for the accounting side of the accounting and professional services firms. And to that, there are more rigorous application requirements around passing your CPA exam and the like. But for most folks who are applying for the advisory services practices, the above guidance would make sense.
So just a couple of additional notes. I know this is a little bit focused on interns, and as Greg mentioned, definitely be in touch with the recruiters that are on campus from the different firms, which you can probably get in touch with through your school's on-campus hiring divisions. Another thing to keep in mind is that you really can apply as any major. I'm an attorney by background. My colleagues included people who were math majors, economic majors, health and business administration majors. And you can also apply after you've graduated. So whether that means it's the June after you graduated or years after, but as Greg mentioned, it's about building those relationships either with the recruiters who are coming in or the various people that might be coming in to present or network with you from the various firms, as well as your colleagues who might move on to those firms. You might have all been students together in class. They are now part of your network, so do stay in touch with them, because if you don't get that internship that first year, you can always apply a year or two later, and the firms will be happy to look at you then as well.
Thank you very much for listening to the Accounting and Professional Services 101 presentation. Hopefully now you'll see the breadth and depth of what professional services firms offer and understand how similar to consulting professional services in the advisory space can be. We look forward to meeting each one of you at the OUBC conference and encourage you to join us during the career fair or throughout the rest of the events. Thank you very much for listening to the Accounting and Professional Services 101 section. Hopefully now you'll see how much is really accomplished and worked on by the professional services firms. We look forward to seeing you at the booths of the Big Four. Thank you very much for listening to the Accounting and Professional Services 101 presentation. Hopefully now you'll see the breadth and depth of what professional services firms offer and understand how similar to consulting professional services in the advisory space can be. We look forward to meeting each one of you at the OUBC conference and encourage you to join us during the career fair or throughout the rest of the events.